Let's do it.
Welcome to a conversation between me and Jay. See, I don't ever start the show off that way. I'm always like, welcome to, you got to change it up, man, or you get stuck in a rut.
Right.
I like to keep it fresh a little bit. I mean, would you say, if I had to ask you, would you prefer to introduce yourself or would you prefer to talk about what's on your mind?
I introduce myself first, I guess, and then we'll just get into whatever.
Okay, Jay. Well, who are you?
I am Jay Sloan. I'm an artist, comic book creator. I run my own indie comic book label called Unparalleled Comics, where we do superhero and sci-fi comic books. And we're getting into different genres as we build our label and grow. I'm a graphic designer by day, and I'm into, I have all kinds of different things that I'm into as far as, outside of work and comic books. So
what made you get attached to wanting to make comics? Like, was it just from watching superheroes as a kid?
So, yeah, I guess, initially, so I grew up in the 70s. So I watched, growing up, I always watched like reruns of the old black and white Superman and, of course, Batman with, what's his name? The old Batman Robin show, Wonder Woman.
Michael Keaton?
No, the one that was, I guess it was originally aired in the 60s, but they reran it in the 70s. I'm blanking right now on the guy's name. I shouldn't. He was guest on The Simpsons a lot.
Adam West?
Yes, Adam West.
How could you forget that man?
It's still a little early for me here in the Midwest. I'm still good. Yeah, there's so much stuff going up in my brain. Yeah, Adam West, the old Adam West Batmans.
It's funny because like I've talked to people that are like Michael Keaton. Like for me, Christian Bale would be my Batman because I'm only in my 20s. Like I never really got the chance to watch Adam West or Michael Keaton. But like my nephew, he's only 4 or 5 years old, and his Spider-Man's Tom Holland. And I'm like, no. Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man. That's the real guy in my mind.
Right. Yeah. I saw Spider-Man's first live action appearance on TV, which was, I guess it was Sesame Street, but he was also on the Electric Company. I don't know if you've ever heard of that show, but
no, I have not. See,
so watched a lot of PBS growing up as well. So Sesame Street was on, and then right after that, there was a show called The Electric Company.
Now, have you seen the new show, the superhero one that everyone's talking about called Invincible?
Yes, I have. I watched the whole season.
That's fucking brutal, man.
Yes, it is.
I've only seen like little bits on YouTube, but then I had to go and watch it. But I was watching one of the scenes. It's like, all right, he's going to fight these people. He was crushing heads. He was ripping people's hearts out. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know what to think right now.
It's ruthless. I was, I knew of the comic books and, I've seen a lot of the artwork and characters, but I never really read any of the issues. So watching the animated show on Prime, it was all fresh to me. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. And as the season goes on, it gets a little bloodier and a little gorier. More gory, but
it's less like, I guess, impactful when you see it in a comic, because I think we all see like when you see comic and a character getting killed, it's kind of like, oh, and then it's enticing, but it's not as dramatic as it is when you're watching like an animated show. Like when I was a kid watching Static Shock or something, and then now the kids are growing up with this, I'm like, does that mean the world's just becoming more numb to the fact that like it's TV, so you can really like, you need to get their attention, I guess, by having some dude get his heart ripped out of his chest?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or just I guess maybe when we were growing up, you'd watch animated shows and be like, yeah, this is cool, but what if it went even further? What if you just watched, maybe you could see an animated show that was geared towards adult level content?
Well, I follow a past guest. He calls himself the cosmic comic historian, and he just posts like old like movies, comics bits, and all these old show things, like fun comic facts, kind of.
Yeah.
And he was showing an old Batman one where he had a bomb in his hands, and he was running and he was trying to get rid of it, and then he went to go throw it. There was a bunch of nuns, so he turns and he runs to go throw it again, and then it's like a family with a little baby in a stroller. Then he goes and runs to throw it again, like off the balcony or off the pier, and there's a bunch of baby ducks and their mother right there, and he's like, I don't know how to get rid of this bomb. And I'm like, that compared to now where it's like a dude's getting like a hole punched through his chest or getting his
Yeah.
head crushed, and I'm like, it's just interesting to see, because that to me is fascinating, just the growth of how it's all kind of changed a little bit. I mean, if you would have said comics back in the day, people would have thought like you're a nerd. That used to be an insult, and now it's
Right.
like when you say nerd, you get a bunch of people on your side that are like, we support you. It's like, what's
Right.
happening right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. It's turned around. Yeah. When I first started reading comics, I was like when I really hardcore started getting comic books and going to the comic book shop on a weekly basis and getting all the new issues as they came out. I was probably about 13, 14, somewhere around there. It was junior high going into high school. And yeah, none of my other friends read comics. No one really knew anything, other than your basic pop culture stuff that was everywhere. But yeah, so I never had anyone really to talk comics about with back then, and I would still I'd wear my Wolverine shirt or my X-Men shirts and stuff, and people would be like, they'd give you weird looks. They're like, you read comics, you're into comics, blah blah blah. But yeah, now it's totally different.
Well, yeah, there was like a bunch of true hardcore fans versus non-hardcore fans, like people that say like, oh, I'll wear the merch or whatever, but they don't know the whole story behind it. And people were getting mad at other people on Twitter, like, shut up, you're not a true fan. And I'm like, man, it's just weird to see that. I don't know if it's because have they gotten better, have they gotten worse, or is it just this paradigm shift where now it's becoming this popular thing in our times today, where it's like now everyone's enjoying comics. I think it's probably the Marvel universe had a big impact on a lot of people, at least opening up the field of view for a lot of fans that have never really read the comics. But I look at it now, like I want to see a Static Shock movie. I loved Shazam. I loved all these movies that are out there. And I've always enjoyed the comics. My first comic was a Kiss comic. My dad was a big Kiss guy, so I never got to see any
Oh
of the superhero stuff. I got to
yeah.
see Phantoms at the circus and all that, Psycho Circus.
Yeah, yeah, that's a little different side to comics, but yeah, that's one of the great things about comics right now is there's so much content. I mean, it's not all superhero stuff, It's there's genres of all types. If you like crime thrillers or mysteries, or if you like westerns or horror, I mean, it's all out there. There's comic books out there for everything.
What I guess is your, like, if you were to be a dry pitch of your comics, what is it? What exactly is it about?
So we'll go with Stellar Odyssey first. That's one that just got done on Kickstarter. That is a sci-fi fantasy comic, and it's my love letter to the sci-fi fantasy genre. Um, and this particular title, it doesn't follow the same group of characters like through all the issues. Like we're in the middle of a 3-issue story arc that's following one particular group of characters, but it's a wide uh, universe, and we've like so this these 3 issues we're in now. It follows a group of smugglers that are on the run from bounty hunters. They're on a mission to deliver a package to their client, and they have a bounty on their head. So they have bounty hunters chasing them. They have a ship. They accidentally shipwreck on a planet that's off course. So they're encountering all these different issues while they're trying to deliver their package, and all the while being chased by bounty hunters. So
Do you like the off-pitch characters, like the ones that seem like to be the underdogs, or the ones that no one really like? Maybe a little bit like the Misfits, for instance. Like I'm a big fan of, like, especially when like comics or at least some movies started taking a different turn, instead of focusing on like, well, he was bit by a spider and then got superpowers. Or I like the little like underdog aspect of things. I mean, that's why my
yeah.
mascot's the dodo bird. Is like everyone
Mm.
considers it to be this idiotic thing, and it turns out it was just naive and didn't know what danger was. And I'm like, I like that story to it, because a lot
Yeah.
of people don't get to see that perspective. You get to see it from either like a god perspective, which is main reason why I enjoyed Graphic Universe when I was a kid. I came across those books in my school. So I was reading those because they were quick little reads, but it started teaching me so much about Greek mythology, started teaching me about religion, started teaching me about so much stuff that I never even knew, but they showed it in a better, I guess, not so much twisted. I mean, it was a lot. I was only like 10 at the time. So it was a lot to show like Hercules clubbing somebody in the head and their eyes going everywhere. But it was interesting because if anything, it causes you to research more about it. But I just like that you get to see a different perspective on what you've constantly been told, constantly been shown. I mean, superheroes back in the day used to be these giant symbols of like Batman never kills. Now it's like you see a thing of the new Batman where he's beating the shit out of the dude, and you're like, that dude's dead. I know for a fact he
Yeah.
just took 20 punches to the face and his arm broke. Like he's not probably alive.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of Batman purists out there still. They're like, Batman would never do that. But yeah, I mean you know, the action, over the top action, the adventure, these grand storylines, and you know, the fight scenes and all the big effects and whatnot that you visuals that you see, you know, those are fun and they keep you interested and excited about the comic. But when it comes down to it, it's really about the character. So um, like for instance, if we just talk about like Marvel Comics and Stan Lee and how he took a different approach, where like say Peter Parker, for instance, yeah, he's has his costume, he has powers, and he's a hero, but really it's more about Peter Parker and his struggles as a teenager to try to fit in, girl
Being more
problems,
relatable.
be more relatable. Yeah, so yeah, for me, it all the other stuff on top is cool and extras, but yeah, when it comes down to it, it's really about the character and being relatable.
I think probably the main thing in my mind would be if I was going to create art, I want to make sure that people can connect to whoever it is like that I'm because I think you kind of pick your favorites a little bit, like especially if you're
Yeah,
starting a comic series or something, you probably create one character and you go from there. But when you look at that one character, it's like, do I want him to be the hero, the villain? Do I want people to like him? Do I want people to dislike him? I mean,
right.
I remember being a kid and drawing all the time just because I would never pay attention in school. But when I was drawing these things, I can never draw hands or feet. It's just one thing it's out of my realm. But I would start thinking of traits of this character. What's his personality like? Do I want him to be favored by everybody? Do I want him to be feared by everybody? And I think a really good movie that shows the best part of that, and it might sound childish, but Megamind,
Hmm.
when you really get to see like he wants to be the supervillain and he tries to create a superhero and that superhero turns into a supervillain and then he ends up becoming the superhero. Spoiler alert for anybody listening. But it isn't, I think that was important because it showed a different side of like he is human, he does care, and it's just like you see a whole different perspective that a lot of people don't get to see. I think if you've ever seen Cobra Kai, if you watch all the seasons of Cobra Kai, you're realizing that there's not a good guy and a bad guy like they showed you in the movie. There, from both perspectives, you can see that like, oh shit, there's just a bunch of things going wrong that are pinning these people up against each other. And from one person's view to another person's view, it looks like there's a good and a bad. When really they're just misconfused, and that really causes you to look at life in a bigger perspective of things. If what's my perspective based on this person's perspective, and I love that a show can do that, let
Yeah,
alone a comic that can do that to a kid and show them that there's so much more out there that you don't even know. Just because it's not in your field of view doesn't mean it's not happening.
right. Yeah. And I do tend to prefer comics and storylines where those roles are kind of blurred, where it's, you know, you don't really have a good guy or a bad guy. Or you know, so a lot of my comics I refer to either the characters as they're the antagonist of the story or they're the protagonist of the story. But also going back to your point with the villains, a good villain is someone who's not like you know, twirling their mustache and plotting evil deeds. They, you know, they're fighting for a cause that they feel is right, or they think they're doing the right thing, but not realizing, you know, some of the other damage or dangers or whatever that they may be causing. So yeah, a good villain is, you know, just misdirected.
Do you feel like that the comic or at least the geek culture, I would say, or whatever you want to call it, is kind of coming to a bit of a close. Just with like, it seems like a lot of the, I know we have super movies that are coming out and stuff, but it seems like we hit a lot of big ones right now, and now everything seems to be dying down. Like the hype was a lot bigger, I think, at the start of the pandemic. Everyone was like losing their shit of
Right.
just like, oh my god, the Snyder cut, and I'm like, all right, chill the fuck out. Like we're in a
Yeah.
conversation. I don't need to have you jumping out of your seat. But now it's like it's starting to dwindle off a little bit. Like I remember when there were comic book shirts in every single store. You couldn't go to a store without seeing a Punisher shirt or this type of shirt. And now it's kind of like we're seeing different trends coming. I'm wondering what the next one's going to be. Do you think it's fading out, or you think it's still in the mix?
I think it's slowed down a little bit because mainly I guess because of the pandemic. Going into the pandemic, stuff was still had been filmed, had been created, and was going through the final stages before they put it out. So we still had a lot of content coming out heading into it, but it put a pause on production at that time. So right now we're in this lull where there's not a lot of material that's been coming out because stuff was put on hold. But I think now that we're coming out of it and there are more stuff, like if you look at Marvel's slate, I mean they've got so many shows coming out on Disney Plus, but their movie slate, I mean they had a bunch of movies they had to push back because of the pandemic and people aren't able to go to the movie theaters like they were before the pandemic. But now, I mean they have uh I can't even remember last time I looked. Like they just put out a sizzle reel of their upcoming movies, and there's like four, maybe I think maybe five movies if you include the Sony Spider-Man movie that are coming out uh, over the next 6 to 8 months. So I think once more content starts coming back out, it'll boost back up. Um, like the viewing numbers on WandaVision were incredibly high,
Well,
and a lot of people talking about that.
Winter Soldier, that that com- that whole TV series right after WandaVision, that was like a perfect release. They gave you a couple of weeks to kind of recover and everything, like
Yeah,
get to back to your like your antsy stage of when's the next stuff coming out. Do you like it better that there's a release back to back, kind of keep it in the field of view, or do you like it that it's so far out? Like I know we're not getting Guardians of the Galaxy 3 until like 2023, so I'm like that's
yeah,
2 years away.
yeah. That's kind of bummer. And that's a different situation when with them firing.
Batista.
Well, yeah. But James Gunn, when they let him go for a while because of his past Twitter comments or whatever, so he went and did the Suicide Squad for DC. So he was busy doing other stuff. Now they rehired him. So and Guardians of the Galaxy was always James Gunn's thing. His scripts and whatnot. So connected in some grand way, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much with they don't have to be necessarily back to back to keep me interested because right now there's so much content out there. Like between working my day job and producing comics, I don't have enough time to watch everything that I want to watch. So for me, there's plenty of good content, and it's not always it's not all comic book related. Um, there was a show on HBO Max that I enjoyed watching, Raised by Wolves. Did
I
you
haven't
watch
seen
that?
that one.
That was Ridley Scott. He created and directed that one. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much content out there. It's hard to keep up with it
Out
all.
of yeah, that's what I'm saying. Out of everything, like someone mentioned the Invincible show to me, and I'm like, what is that? And he's like, it's like superheroes, but like way more gore and stuff. I'm like, okay. So I started looking up clips on YouTube. I'm like, how have I not heard of this show? And it's like you realize
Right.
there's so much stuff out there. When are we gonna get a superhero that like his superpower abilities are only unlocked after smoking crack? I would fund and watch that. I like seeing things that are against the norm. Like I found it
Yeah.
really interesting because I'm a Green Lantern fan. And I
Okay.
really enjoyed the movie because not only is it the only one that we have for Green Lantern,
Uh
but
huh.
it's kind of like it should have been done in two movies. I think they rushed a lot of it and kind of like it was a quick money grab probably. But
Right.
when it comes to like the guy who trained him, He was the one that was supposed to be the protector of Superman's planet. And it's like, can we get
Oh yeah.
like some background story and some like, I would love like a movie on that separately of everything happened there. Like there's so many bits and pieces, but they're tackling the big heroes and then
Right.
they're putting them on like one main mission that everybody knows about. I'm like, let's get like, hey, let's instead of Superman fighting Lex Luthor, let's get him talking about this one comic series where it did this. Like, there's plenty of good ideas out there. Static Shock's an untouched gem when it comes just to the aspect of like, we don't have a lot of like African American or black superheroes. There's not a
Right.
whole lot besides Black Panther, and you can name a couple more, but like Static Shock was impactful for a lot of people's, and they just left that there. Like
Yeah.
that was something I used to come home and watch on the TV when I was a kid, when I got done from school. Like there's a lot of people my age that would fund so much money at that, but it's like, I don't know why they're not touching it. I know they make Funko Pops out of them still now, but
Yeah.
there's like untapped potential everywhere because they want to hit the major ones.
Right.
We need to make a super. We don't need another fifth Batman movie. I'm okay with putting a brakes on that one and going to a different one. But they're like,
Yeah.
well, we're going to do the same movie, but we're going to get different actors to play it in a different rendition and a different
Right.
idea. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm okay. I would rather see a whole nother superhero be done, you know?
Yeah. Give us something totally fresh. And the just here recently, they're starting to bring back the Milestone comics and all those characters. So like Static Shock and Milestone, Hardware, some of all those black characters that I don't think they were being published for a while, and I don't know if that has anything to do with why DC hasn't been making TV or movie content with them, but they're starting those comics back. Those comics are back now, coming out with new issues and new series. So we might be getting some TV and movie content with those characters soon,
How do you
which would be
think
nice.
how do you think these board meetings go? Because I look at it like,
Uh,
is it just like they just circle like, well, here's what the public probably wants to see. Let's go for that. It's like, but what about this amazing story over here? Like, there's a bunch of people that probably have really good ideas. We're like, why aren't we talking about this superhero? But the company's like, well, this one everyone knows. So let's just go
right.
with what everybody knows. I'm like, well, then we're never gonna have movies where people learn about a new superhero and cause them to go back and look for it. I mean, I downloaded the comics app on my phone just to be able to look at some of these comics. I think the best part is that they're all different renditions of a superhero. Like they're all different multiple universes or something. It's that own artist universe, which I think is like,
Right.
some of these have potential to be like movie type scenarios, but they just want the basic stuff, the things that people know, like with Mandalorian. He
Yeah.
looks like Django Fett, and that's why a lot of people bought into it. Then you get to learn a whole new character where it's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, I never knew about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I like getting to see and learn about new characters. I like fresh ideas. And there are tons of unmined properties out there. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Image Comics, but Image Comics has tons of series and titles that would be great for TV and movies. Also, yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
Welcome to Out of the Blank podcast. When you're researching, for instance, I love the shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
When you're like watching any of these comics, or if you're watching the movies or anything like that, and you're really getting like, because you're a fan of it all, do you ever find it hard to not put bits and pieces of something that you saw on there into your own work? Like I found that difficult when in the Invincible show, when he was making his super suit. Like I saw all the basic templates that the dude had laid out in his like little like basement where the guy could pick his suit and everything, and he wanted the color change. But I was looking at it, I was like, man, if I had to make a super suit, I would keep pulling bits and pieces of things that I've seen, not making it my own, which I find it's difficult because when you're watching a movie, Snyder Cut or something, when you're watching something that's involved in this universe, it's so hard not to take a bit or a piece and put it into your own work.
Right. Yeah, early on that kind of I worried about that, or that would happen, like, I'd be like, oh, maybe subconsciously I did this because I watched this, or I saw it in this comic, or this and that. But now I've gotten to the point where I kind of detach from that. I just kind of I get into like, if I'm doing a character design, I think about who the character is, what what they're doing, why, the gear that they have on or their outfit, it has to serve a purpose of whatever they're doing, what they need it to do for them. And as far as like story writing, or coming up with story ideas and concepts, I used to be like, I would come up with an idea and start working it out and then see something else and be like, oh man, that was my idea. Now this person beat me to it. They took my idea. I can't do it. Now I got to change it. But when you think about it, almost everything's been done. I mean, it's hard these days to be completely original and have a completely original idea. So what I focus on more is the execution of it, just telling the story in my style, doing it, telling it my way. And, I don't intentionally try to copy or do stuff that other people have done. It's hard for stuff to not, like you said, sneak its way in there just because it's in your, it's in your brain. You've seen it, but I don't worry about it. I just, I just worry about the execution and doing it my style, doing it my way.
Sometimes it takes a pair too. Like for instance, I have some crazy ass ideas. I mean, I guess that's also why the name of the show is the way it is.
Right.
But I'll toss out an idea to my buddy Adam, who draws my shirts and everything, and it's his style though. So like I could try and make it, but like when I made my own design, which was like a Rorschach test. It's like the
Mm,
blobs and everything.
yeah.
That was the hardest thing. I spent 4 hours making it because I kept trying to form it into something.
Mm,
So I had to keep sending it to like 50 different people and say, what do you see? If everyone got exactly the same answer, I had to change it. And then eventually people were saying, I see a seahorse. I see a guy at a desk. One dude was like, I see a dude taking a shit. I was like, what? Explain to me how you see that out of this. I was like, what I see is a lobster. And everyone's like, what? And everyone had a different answer. And that's how I knew it was right. But it's
yeah.
so hard because you don't know what you could have seen, could have came across subconsciously that now you're infusing into your work, where some person randomly, after, let's say you've established 2 comic book series, goes, hey, that's from this. And you're like, what? And then you Google it and you're like, oh shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, some of them things just can't be helped. Like, I've thought so many times, I thought I was, oh yeah, this is cool. This is an original idea. I don't think anyone's ever done this. And then you turn around and just somewhere along the line, you're like, oh, this guy over here did it. Someone's already done it. So yeah, I mean, that happens.
I mean, there's a process when it comes to original work, and then there's a process when it comes to like industrial work. And what I mean by that is
Mm,
like when we look at all the companies that make movies, they are all able to work off like a basic template. That's kind of all what they do is work off like, here, we're gonna have a good guy and then we're gonna have a bad guy. Unless you're with Sharknado. Whoever the fuck is designing
mm.
that is doing lines of coke off their meeting room table or something, because that
Right.
movie is
Hey,
intense.
I got this idea, man. Check this out.
Yeah, it ain't easy. But when it comes to original work, especially if you're trying to get your comic book funded or you're trying to get people interested into it, you still want to have some basic principles, but you want to try and craft it into your own. And it's always that first issue, that first comic book that comes out is probably the most difficult, because that's going to
Yeah.
make or break your audience if they can't get into the first episode. Like
Right.
my buddy Jay Moore, he does these comics that, I mean, he enticed me with it when he goes, yeah, there's a homeless man eating a cat in a park. You're like, what? It's like, turns out the homeless man's a demon. You're like, what? And it's like, that is so against the norm. Sometimes you have to be outrageous like that too, but it
Yeah.
gets hard because you got to also know when you're going to see, like, you're going to create something. Do you feel like comics have full creativity, full emotion, or do you feel like you can still be censored or canceled a little bit if you go a little bit too far on something?
Um, I think it depends on your publishing label. Like if you're one of the big two, Marvel or DC, sure. Yeah, I mean, they have more strict regulations and guidelines that they go by. Yeah, and I mean, you see people get outraged about, inclusion or whatever. People get upset that, hey, they took this character that I've known for a long time and they made him gay, or they made him this, or they changed this character to a woman or whatever. And people get, they get all up in arms about it. But if you're under a smaller press label, or you're an indie publisher like myself, where you do it yourself, um, you know, you find your audience, and those people usually respect and will keep following you, you know, with whatever you do. So yeah, I think it depends on the label or whatever your platform is, who you're putting your stuff out under.
Does it ever get tasking trying to come up with inspiration? Like, where do you find that you pull your inspiration from?
So yeah, I mean, there's ebbs and flow. There's times where, you know, the creativity's just not there, and you know, I just find other stuff to do. Like you know, if I'm not creating new material or ideas, you know, then I'm working on graphics for current stuff, or I'm doing, you know, this and that. Then there's times where it's just you're bursting at the seams, and you've got so much new ideas that are just constantly flowing out. Um, I draw inspiration from almost everywhere, you know, whether it's a book that I read, or, you know, a TV show or movie that I watch, or, you know, just out and about everyday life, just, you know, doing something out and you see something happen, or see something on the news or whatever, you know, there's ideas and inspiration everywhere. Uh, One of the other comics that I'm working on right now, it's called Anomalistic, and I've drawn. It's basically it's like a new group of heroes that investigate and defend the population of Earth against paranormal and supernatural threats, stuff that, you know, most people don't believe in, or, you know, if it's there and they just don't see it because uh, it doesn't exist in their reality. So like I've drawn inspiration from anywhere from like Bob Lazar and Area 51 and all the alien stuff, to like Skinwalker Ranch,
What?
Mothman.
Hold on. What do you think about Skinwalker Ranch, dude? I just watched that documentary. I think I've seen it twice now.
Yeah,
I watched it like when I was like, I'm gonna put this on before I go to bed, and then next thing you
right,
know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're like, I can't fucking look away right now.
right. Man, that is some crazy stuff. I think, I mean, it's hard to really say, you know, without seeing any of the evidence yourself. It's definitely interesting, but I mean, it's possible that, you know, it's a vortex of you know, different things coming together. I mean, you know, you got reports of people seeing dire wolves, all the way to like portals opening up to other universes, or, you know, places where they see different colored sky and black silhouetted creatures crawling out of the holes, and to
Well, out of all the crazy shit, what would you say you probably have the most belief in?
um
Don't worry, you're not going to come off as a nut job. I'm just saying. I've heard birds aren't real. I've heard a lot of stuff. I just want to, because I have some things in my mind that I think are probably more likely than others, but I think both of us know we don't know what's out there when it comes.
right.
But when the COVID bill comes out and they're like alien shit, I'm like, I'm in it. I'm in it.
Right. So I mean, I do believe that there's a lot more going on in this life than what we realize. So, as big as the galaxy is, or as big as the universe is, you know, billions and billions, trillions of stars, and every star has at least one planet or whatever that orbits around it. I mean, it seems highly improbable that there's not any other intelligent life out there. So, to me, the possibility that, you know, aliens exist and maybe visiting us or checking in on us or whatever, I mean, that's a pretty plausible idea to me. Whether or not they're actually here, or what people are claiming to see out there are aliens, who knows? But that so you know, that's something I don't, you know, discard or think is completely out of the realm. Also, I mean, I've had some.
Tell me, please. I've had 3 alien stories on this podcast about maybe half a year to a year apart from each other. These
Uh-huh.
people don't know each other and they've explained the exact same thing. So, for the love of God, please tell me yours.
Okay. So now I don't. This is kind of it just seems weird, but so growing up, I had so like looking back, I'm like, was it a dream or was it real? I don't know. It's hard. It was so long ago. It's hard to tell. So I remember. Okay, so I was born in '73. So when I was 5, which would have been about 78, 79, uh, I remember waking up So I don't know if this was a dream or if this was real, but it seemed like I woke up from a dream and my room was completely filled with light. Like it was just the brightest white, and you couldn't see anything else like in my room. But I remember it seemed like I was still laying in my bed and it could kind of see my bed around me, but there were like silhouettes of, what people typically explain as grays. But it was just the silhouettes, like staying, like maybe 4 or 6 of them standing around my bed. And the thing I remember the most is just being so stricken with fear, and that like I was paralyzed. Like I don't sleep paralysis. I was paralyzed. I was trying to scream for my parents to come into my room, but I couldn't utter any words. Completely paralyzed, and I remember just being completely scared and fearful. And then next thing I guess, after a few seconds or whatever, I just remember it was over and waking up in the morning and be like, whoa, was that a dream? Or, did that really happen? I thought it really happened. And at that time that year, I'm thinking back, like, were there any movies or TV shows that I saw at that time that would put those ideas in my head to where I would dream about it? And I don't know that there was. I mean, I think, you know, uh, Close Encounters of the Third Kind might have been out at that time, but whether I seen it at the age of 5 before that happened, I don't know. Um, but that was kind of a recurring thing on and off throughout my childhood. And then when I guess I was about 13 or 14, I built a room in the basement. I had my room moved down into the basement. It was a big thing
Like
when I
most
was at
kids when they're teenagers do.
yeah, like I want my room in the basement, and so I put my room on the end where there were no windows, so it was like completely dark any time of day in there. But I started having, I don't know if they were dreams or if it was real again. I started having these uh, like encounters or whatever, these experiences where I thought there were people in my room. Like I would wake up, see, like wake up if you're tossing, if you change sides, if you sleep on your side and you switch sides, like wake up for a couple seconds and then you drift right back asleep. But in that moment of like waking up, thinking that I saw like a shadowy figure in my room, and happened. Like there was one time when I like swore there was somebody there that I like actually like reached out and like took a swing at them, and just there was nothing there. It was just like disappeared. But so at the time, it was kind of creeped me out, and I wasn't sure if this stuff was real. So at the time, the girl I was dating, her best friend's mom was a like a tarot card reader and a fortune teller type. She did that kind of stuff, and she was also a dream interpreter. So my girlfriend was like, "I want you to come to my friend's mom and tell her about your dreams that you've been having." So I did, and I'm not a religious person, and I wasn't then, and I wasn't now. So this kind of always threw me. But she told me, she's like, next time you have that experience, tell them, you say this to them. Say, for it was like, by the power of God or in the name of God, I command you to leave me alone and never bother me again. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird, especially for someone that's does fortune telling and tarot cards and is into that kind of stuff, telling me to use God's name. But so I did it, and then it stopped. So I don't know whether it was subconscious or what, if that that phrase actually has some sort of power, if those things were real. But so yeah, that was kind of my first like experiences with like paranormal stuff, and just kind of always kind of weirded me out. But I was always like, were they dreams? Was it subconscious stuff, or was it real? I don't really know. But then another brush with like supernatural paranormal things, when I was 21, my dad passed away in our house from a heart attack. And they people usually say, like, if someone dies in a house or whatever, it might open a portal to the other side or whatever, which, I didn't really think about it much initially. But then there was one night, so I had moved back home with my parents for a little while to save up money to get back out and get my own place. So I was back staying down in my old room in the basement. And then he passed away. And then there was one night I was getting ready for bed, and it was probably like 2 in the morning. I was up doing art or whatever. It was probably like somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden my dog start freaking out and like was fixated on one corner of my basement and was just growling and barking, and all his hair was standing up on the back. And I've never seen my dog do that before, and it kind of started freaking me out. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, what's he? I look, and I'm like, I don't see nothing. What, calmed him down. And then after that, I was having experiences where like I would be woken up at night with these like a sensation that there was something at the end of my bed, like bouncing up and down. And at first, being in the Midwest, we don't get earthquakes like California does, but we get small tremors from the San Andreas fault line. So first I'm like, yeah, maybe there was like a small earthquake or faint earthquake, and I was just feeling vibrations from that. But then it kept happening, and I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I have restless leg syndrome and I don't know about it. Maybe I'm just, my legs are having muscle spasms and that's waking me up. Well, there was one night when it woke me up, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, is it my legs or what? So I stood, I just remained completely still, and I was awake, and then it kept happening. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it happened a few other times. And then I remembered what my past girlfriend's mom told me, and I used that line again, and it stopped after that. So,
see, I'm a big paranormal believer just because I've said this occurrence on here before, but I had people in my family have been known to like see ghosts and stuff like that, which I never really
yeah.
believed. And it even sounds wacko, even off the things I've been able to do that I can't really explain. But I had a dream one time that shook me really bad where I saw a dude lying in like a little bit of I live in a beach town. So he was lying like in a channel, like near some marsh area. And I remember going downstairs like, what the fuck? Like all messed up. Like I don't understand what that dream was. And I don't ever dream really. I'm an insomniac. So when I do, they're very intense, but it's only like an hour of sleep for me. It feels like 9 years. And I remember coming downstairs and someone asked me, are you okay? And I said, yeah. And I was just had this weird dream. And they're like, explain me your dream. And I started explaining this dream. And then next thing you know, they come over with their phone and pull up to a missing person on Facebook. Goes, is this the person? And I'm like, yeah. And like, where did you see all this stuff happen? And I explained it, and they found the dude later at that, like a descriptive location, like I described. And a long time ago, I don't know if you might remember this, but like maybe 6 years ago, a little girl went missing. I think her last name was Foxwell or something like that.
Okay.
They've been looking for her for like a week and a half. And my mom ran over to my dad and was like, I need you to call the cops and say that this is where she's located. And my dad's like, what? Like, I'm not doing that. Are you insane? And she's like, I had a dream. She came to me and said, tell my parents this is where my body is. And this exact location. She's like, if you don't do it, I'm going there and I'm going to do it. And my dad's like, you're going to get locked up if you do that. So my dad calls it in, and they found the girl at that exact location. And I was like, I can't explain that shit. So I believe in that a lot. And I also believe in the aliens thing too. I don't know if you remember a long time ago, both of my alien experiences happened at the same exact house, but they were when I was really little. So I don't know if it was my imagination or a dream.
Right.
But they had virtual reality before virtual reality. It was a little goggles, like a giant baseball helmet thing you put on your head, and it would have little light up people like karate positions, and you would do the pose or whatever. I don't know if it actually worked, but it would act like if a dude's coming at you with a swing, you'd know to like put your arm up to block.
Right.
That's how it would be, but it would just be little light up figures where the eyes would be on the goggles. And I remember it's my brother. So he's older than me. I was in his room when he was at school, and I was like, I want to play with it. And I remember when it was like a couple minutes in, a character popped up, and I went to punch. And when I punched, something like I hit something.
Yeah.
And I oh my God. And I ripped the goggles off, and I was in the middle of the room, open space, nothing around
there.
me.
Wow.
And I hit something, and I was like, what the and I just thought like maybe like, I don't know, like something flew by or something, but I was like, and I start looking at it. I'm like, what the fuck was that? Cause like there was nothing in the room. I thought I hit a person.
Yeah.
Nobody's standing there, and you couldn't, I ripped it off so fast. It's like, you have to be the Flash to be able to hop out of there real quick.
Right.
And then
Wow.
at that same exact house, I remember I was coming home after I think we went out to the movies, and I was so little, but I remember walking up the steps to my door, and we lived across from a cornfield, and there was a giant, like, dark, it was night, so it was pitch black. There was you could still kind of see clouds, like dark
Right.
clouds, but it was night. There's a beam of light just going right into the cornfield. And I was like, what is that? And I remember someone saying it's a light from heaven. Something must have died in that field.
Hmm.
I start looking at it like, wait a minute, was that like alien shit? And I'm like, we just chalked it up to God. Like, I don't
Right.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah, man, going back to dreams, that dreams are weird, man. It's been a while since I've had like dreamt about something and then like a prophetic dream, but I had there was one time I recall, so I had this dream that me and some of my buddies went camping, and we went down by the river, and we were like doing some night fishing close to the river. And in my dreams, so one I just remember like standing in one place, but then like the water was getting higher. It's like, oh man, like I'm standing in water. I don't, I haven't moved, but now there's water on my feet. And then a little bit later, within minutes, like the water was up to my knees. And then before I knew it, we were all like treading water, like we were just surrounded by water, treading water, and like what's going on with how the river get up so high and this and that, and it was really weird. It was very realistic. And then I wake up in the morning, go get the paper, and first like headline, front page of the local paper, uh, local dam had broke and flooded this whole camp area that we used to go to all the time. I was like, holy cow! I was like, and sometimes I sleep with the TV on, but this night I didn't. So sometimes like, oh, maybe it was on the news and it leaked into my dream, and that's why I dreamt about it. But TV was not on that night, so it was like wow. I was like, I just had a dream about camping down there, and all of a sudden having to tread water, and then here it is in the newspaper that the dam broke. I'm like, that is trippy.
I start to think more and more that dreams are like, because we all have like wave frequencies, I'd say, of our brain, like whatever our frequencies are. And I think it's a very, very rare chance that one of those accidentally gets blended into another. And you
Right.
can kind of like people that have a dream and it's like they see someone get murdered and it turns out that person was murdered that day. It's like, I was that person. It's like, did I do the killing? It's like, no, I just think like we're so filled with energy, especially if you're tied to a certain place. If you go to this local campground that you've been to since you were a kid and going over and over and over again to it for 30 something years, and then
Yeah.
something happens to it, you've exchanged energy with that place. You've
Right.
left a mark there, at least all the times you've been camping. It might not seem like it, but sometimes I feel like just like how animals can imprint on you, sometimes we can imprint and not even knowing on just certain spots or certain things that mean, like I have memories
Yeah.
of a childhood home that I only was there for a short amount of time, but I remember it like it's almost every single one of my childhood memories. And I'm like, we were only there for a year, but I don't even remember it being that fun, but it was something that just, I guess it was a certain moment or something that was going on where my brain just found this to be the time to start recording or whatever it was. And it was
Yeah.
all the stuff to remember.
Yeah. Kind of. It could be somewhere something similar like quantum
Holy shit.
entanglement.
Oh my
Oh,
God, that was your dog. Oh my God.
yeah. It's the shadow wraith. It's followed me to my
I
new
thought it was
house.
the thing from Grunge, like coming out of the thing. I was like, oh, bro.
You're not the first person that she's freaked out during a podcast. She'll
Let's
just
say,
creep up
drop
in
the
the
Zoom call and kill
background.
that thing.
Right. But yeah, like, quantum entanglement. Some things just seem to be tied together.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I
yeah,
wish.
and I got into lucid dreaming for a while too, which that was another whole weird trip.
Could you actually do it though? Because so many dreams I've been in, I think the only ones I can actually move around in was there was like a
Yeah.
Harry Potter version one I had where it
Mm.
was like, when he took the sea kelp and he was able to swim underwater. It was just that the whole entire dream is me swimming underwater.
Like read a lot of forums and people be like, "Oh, it's not like that. You can't really control everything, this and that." I got to a point where I could, like, there were instances like where I decided I wanted to fly away or just fly to go somewhere, and I would fly, or
Like Jenny
uh,
from Forrest Gump.
Yeah, or just change like, oh, they realize, you know, they teach you different things to pick up on, like if you fall in water but you don't feel wet, or you know, if you're, you know, smelling a freshly baked pie but you don't smell anything or whatever, you know, there's different little things that you look for, and the more you do it the better you get at recognizing it. But yeah, it was like once I realized I was dreaming, I could like change my, you know, my surroundings, go somewhere else or do whatever. um you know, there, I remembered, I remember one point there, and this kind of freaked me out. So like I was somewhere, it was almost like a Middle Eastern or Southern Asian type of like a marketplace. And I was just kind of wandering around, and I remember all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know, something clued me in. I'm like, oh, this is a dream. And I stopped and talked to one of the dream characters or people in my dream. I'm like, where are we? And they kind of looked at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, and I said, well, I know I'm dreaming, but where are we? And they like freaked when I told them I knew I was dreaming. They like freaked out and like left. Like they just didn't want to answer me, didn't want anything to do with me, and they left. I was like, huh, that's weird. But then I had this other instance where, so being into comics, they were, you know, I'd find myself in situations in dreams and like just like give myself superpowers or whatever. Like I remember being in this, it was like a old timey tavern. It was big though. It was like a big tavern, and lots of just big burly people just hanging out drinking beers out of giant mugs and whatever. And somehow there was like an argument that got started, and I ended up like getting in a fight with some other patron at this bar, and like within the fight I'm like, oh wait a minute, I'm dreaming, this is a dream. So like um Wolverine was always one of my favorite characters, so I like pop claws out of my hands and start like slicing people up. And then I was like getting, there was so many of them, I was outnumbered, I started getting overwhelmed. So like something made me think about like just throwing bolts of lightning out of my hand, like start
Zeus.
yeah, so I'm like zapping people, and then all of a sudden the roof of this tavern like rips off, and some being like comes down, like he's like flying, comes down from the sky. And I was like, who's the Hellraiser here, or something like that. It was just something weird and bizarre. I'm like, oh, that's me. And they start like attacking me. And I remember, like, you know, at this point I know I'm in a dream and I'm able to come up and do all this stuff, but nothing I decided to do was affecting this person, this being, or whatever they were. And I was got to the point, and they were like start kicking my ass, and nothing I could think of was working against them. So I got to the point where I just like flew off, like I'm going to fly out of here. I got to get away from this guy. And he was chasing me, and then I guess I woke myself up. So then I start, like, every time I would try to get into these lucid dreams, it was like there were these beings or people that were like coming after me to like almost like police me, like, you know.
You woke up out of the simulation.
Yeah, I'm like, what is, so I, it kind of creeped me out to a point where I stopped, you know, I stopped practicing lucid dreaming. I kind of got out of it for a while. So yeah, it's just weird.
Oh man, that's nuts to me because all my dreams are either half-assed or like full throttle, where it's like there's no in between. Like, I mean, I remember
Right.
I was a big superhero fan still, but I always wanted superpowers. And I remember I was a kid and someone asked, like, we're going to give you the power of invincibility. And I thought like Superman, like being able to fly through walls and shit like that.
Yeah.
No, I literally the whole dream got my ass kicked by a dude with super strength. Just
Mm.
kept beating the living, like punching me so hard I would flip through a wall. And that was the whole dream. And then right at the ending, I realized I had more power. And then I could like, you know, I finally like uppercutted them, but we could fly up in the air with it. Like, you know, that
Yeah.
whole like flying, I have more abilities than I thought I did, but that was right at
Right.
the end. So I woke up and I was like, I got fucking
Mm.
gypped.
As soon as I realized my true potential, I woke up.
It's like I don't even get to experience like flying around and just fucking with people. But
They'll come after you.
Jay, you've given me enough of your time, man. Where can people find out, especially your comic? You said is the Kickstarter over now?
The Kickstarter just ended. I probably will be putting it up on Indiegogo for in demand. I've got one of my hero books, Dragonfly, is on Indiegogo, and then we have another Another one of our titles, Operation Eclipse, will be hitting Kickstarter on May 25th. We also, if you go to our Twitter, our Facebook account, you can just find us at Unparalleled Comics. We've got links to an online shop where you can buy all our comics and T-shirts and whatever, all our other merch. So yeah, you look us up, Unparalleled Comics. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. If you just want to follow myself, I'm usually at J Sloan Art across all mediums. So all the social media platforms, I'm J Sloan Art.
I don't know if it's because it's just this morning or if it's just the Zoom call, but I've been trying to figure out who you look like this whole entire podcast. You look like Joey Fatone. Just the way the
blue
lighting
eyes.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, the blue eyes and the pale skin.
I was looking at you. I was like, Jesus. I was like, I feel like I'm talking to Joey Fatone. I kept trying to think of what that name was. I kept thinking NSYNC. Dude, yeah, I'll make sure I link everything in the description. I appreciate you for coming on to the podcast and
yeah,
chatting.
Man, thanks for having me. Yeah, man, it was